She gasped so loud the ship's AI sounded an alarm, warning of a possible hull breach. His body froze, still buried inside her, pulse hammering against her alien skin. Sirens echoed through the metal quarters, red lights flashing, but all he could see was her wide golden eyes, her voice trying to steady itself even while she clenched around him. To the AI it was panic. To him it was the hottest moan he had ever caused. He tried to pull out, but she gripped his hips with surprising strength, holding him in place as if retreat meant dishonor. Her breath trembled. In her species, the position he had taken her from was no casual indulgence. It was a declaration, a binding act. She whispered, voice trembling between arousal and shock, telling him he had just married her by law, bonded not only in flesh but in government records. He blinked, halfway between orgasm and a diplomatic crisis, whispering that humans did not file marriage certificates with their cock. She corrected him with the most serious expression possible, informing him that from this moment forward he was her mate, her protector, and, if the council approved, the ambassador of Earth by extension of his rear-entry bravado. He cursed, not because he regretted the sex, but because he knew humans had a reputation already for being reckless improvisers. Now that reputation had climbed directly into the bedchamber of one of the most politically important alien families. He tried humor as defense, mumbling that at least their honeymoon had started early. She didn't laugh. She reached for a console, still keeping him inside her, and began reciting the binding rites while he protested that humans usually got dinner before paperwork. The AI calmed its alarms, reclassifying the event from emergency to ritual vocalization. He groaned, pressing his forehead to her shoulder, whispering that no one on Earth would believe him if he said he accidentally became a galactic husband by doggy style. She moaned again, this time deliberate, and reminded him that every sound was now on record as part of the union. He swore softly, realizing their entire session was already being stored in diplomatic archive. She looked back over her shoulder, sweat glistening on her ridged skin, and asked him to teach her the words that went with human passion. He thought she meant sweet nothings, so he kissed her neck and whispered pussy. She repeated it, rolling the word with her alien tongue, her hips pushing back as if the word itself drove her. He chuckled darkly, thrusting again and saying dick. She cried it out as though announcing the name of a deity, her moan echoing off the bulkhead. With each movement, he gave another word, cock, moan, slut, until she had a vocabulary building inside her like a growing weapon. He hadn't intended to turn their coupling into a lesson, but her eagerness was intoxicating. Every repetition came with both laughter and a wave of heat, until she was chanting human filth in a rhythm that made the ship's AI consider reclassifying the noise as warfare. He teased that she would scare her council if she spoke like that. She answered, eyes glowing with excitement, that she wanted to honor him by using these new words in public, to show she had learned the deepest parts of his culture. He panicked, pulling her hair gently to stop her rhythm, warning her that human slang wasn't exactly formal. She misunderstood his caution as encouragement, gasping yes, teach me more, while he tried to explain that moan wasn't the right way to greet a priest. She promised she would only use the words when appropriate. Then she shuddered hard beneath him, and said that the most appropriate time was when her father arrived tomorrow to recognize their union. His blood went cold even while his body still pulsed inside her. He muttered that he wasn't ready to meet her father, much less as the son-in-law who had just conquered his daughter from behind. She stroked his face, her expression soft but unrelenting, telling him not to worry because she now knew enough human words to impress her father. He nearly pulled out right then, muttering that the first English greeting she should not choose was deep dicking. She didn't hear him. She was too busy repeating it proudly, convinced it was the phrase that captured the essence of human devotion. He stared at the ceiling, calculating how many hours he had before a galactic dignitary was greeted with porn slang. His thrust slowed, not out of desire but dread, while she pressed back against him with a smile that mixed lust with innocence. She whispered, "Thank you for teaching me, my human." He groaned into her neck, muttering that Earth's first ambassador was about to get executed over vocabulary lessons taught mid-thrust. She tightened around him with a triumphant moan, completely unaware that her new linguistic treasure might start an interstellar war. Her body still hummed with the heat of their union when silence returned to the quarters, broken only by their uneven breathing. He thought maybe the storm had passed, but she turned in his arms, eyes burning with excitement, whispering that she wanted to practice the new human words again. He groaned, half proud and half terrified, realizing the lesson had only just begun. If she was going to repeat them, she needed context, she insisted, which meant every phrase should be tied to the rhythm of their intimacy. He sighed, already sensing that the line between lover and teacher had vanished completely. He started slow, giving her the simple ones, the words that carried weight in human lust. She repeated each one with earnest precision, shaping her alien tongue around them like they were holy scripture. Pussy became an invocation, cock became a battle cry, moans stretched into the sound of surrender. She said them with such seriousness that it became absurd, and he found himself laughing between thrusts, telling her that these words were not supposed to sound like legal declarations. She frowned, insisting that every word spoken during union was sacred, which only made him laugh harder, teasing that she was building a new religion out of pornography. The lesson turned feverish. Every stroke drove a new word into her vocabulary. She practiced them relentlessly, repeating them in different tones, testing how each sound changed the meaning. At one point she whispered cock so softly it melted into a purr, and the next moment she shouted it like a military order. He told her she was going to traumatize her entire fleet if she ever shouted dick like that in public. She tilted her head, confused, and asked why humans would fear such power when the word clearly carried dominance. He muttered that maybe because not every council wanted a bedroom reenactment during peace negotiations. The humor only fed her hunger to learn more. She begged for compound phrases, her voice trembling with desire. He reluctantly gave her filthy combinations, strung together in reckless creativity, just to see her repeat them in her broken accent. Deep dicking rolled off her tongue like a hymn, backdoor bliss sounded like a blessing, and human hammering nearly made him lose himself entirely. Each repetition blurred the line between comedy and climax, until both of them were shaking from equal parts laughter and lust. He told her she was dangerous now, more dangerous than any weapon Earth had, because her vocabulary could break an empire's composure. She beamed at the compliment, then whispered that she intended to use these words to honor him in front of her people. He froze mid-motion, trying to correct her, telling her that honor and profanity did not usually mix well in human tradition. She disagreed, pointing out that his face lit up whenever she used the words, so they must hold the highest cultural value. He tried to argue, but she sealed his mouth with a kiss and whispered cock against his lips, and he knew he had already lost the debate. The rhythm grew harder, more urgent, her chants faster with every thrust. She mixed the words together, creating strange hybrid phrases that almost made sense and almost ruined him. He realized with dawning horror that she wasn't just learning words, she was inventing her own combinations, a dialect of filth that no human had dared imagine. If she brought this new language outside the bedroom, it would spread like wildfire, and Earth's reputation would be cemented as the galaxy's gutter poets. He tried to warn her, but his body betrayed him, shuddering with every ridiculous phrase she moaned into the air. When it ended, she lay trembling in his arms, whispering that she felt enlightened, that she now carried the essence of human passion inside her tongue. He tried to explain that she had only learned slang, not philosophy, but she refused to hear it. To her, these words were treasures, symbols of his culture's deepest truths. He closed his eyes, muttering that the universe was doomed if she ever spoke them outside this room. She stroked his chest gently, promising that she would only use them when the moment was right. He didn't believe her, but exhaustion kept him silent. As they drifted in the afterglow, she whispered about her father's impending visit, her voice filled with pride. She planned to greet him with the strongest human phrase she knew, to show that she was ready to stand beside her mate as a bridge between worlds. His stomach dropped, the heat of pleasure turning instantly into cold dread. He begged her not to use the words in ceremony, explaining that humans reserved them for private passion, not public diplomacy. She smiled with serene certainty, telling him that tomorrow she would demonstrate her mastery in front of the High Chancellor. The room grew heavier with the weight of that promise. He buried his face in his hands, groaning that Earth's first official impression might end with an interstellar declaration of smut. She kissed his cheek sweetly, whispering that she trusted his judgment, but she trusted her instincts even more. Her instincts, unfortunately, were convinced that deep dicking was a noble salutation. He lay awake beside her long after she slept, counting the hours until the disaster he could no longer prevent. And as the ship lights dimmed, he realized with grim humor that every lesson had led them here, from a moan mistaken as an alarm to a vocabulary that might shake empires. Tomorrow would not be a private game anymore. Tomorrow, the words she learned in his bed would echo in the council chamber. The night bled into morning faster than he could process, and dread wrapped around him tighter than her embrace. He had tried convincing her that the phrases she learned were private, reserved for passion, never meant for public ears. She had smiled sweetly and pretended to agree, yet the glow in her eyes said she was already rehearsing. As the ceremonial day arrived, he followed her through the vast corridors of the flagship, stomach twisting at the thought of hearing dirty slang echo through marble halls. His mind searched for excuses, ways to stop her, but every step forward was another nail in the coffin of his peace. The chamber doors opened and revealed an assembly drenched in authority. Dozens of dignitaries lined the circular hall, alien robes shimmering under pale light. At the center stood the High Chancellor, her father, his presence commanding silence. She walked with pride, her hand tugging his arm forward, the proud bride with her unwilling groom. He whispered desperately for her to keep greetings simple, just a hello would do. She gave him a nod as if understanding, then turned to the Chancellor with her chin lifted high. The silence of the chamber shattered when she cried out in perfect English, "Deep dicking, father." The hall froze. Faces twisted into confusion, some gasped, others covered their mouths, a few nearly collapsed from shock. The High Chancellor himself blinked, struggling to translate the phrase, as the human delegation tried and failed to contain their laughter. He buried his face in his hands, muttering that this was exactly the catastrophe he predicted. She, however, looked proud, chest swelling as if she had just honored her mate and her people with the most dignified phrase she knew. An advisor coughed nervously, asking for clarification. She repeated it again, louder, declaring that deep dicking was the human way of showing ultimate respect. The Chancellor's eyes narrowed, demanding an explanation from the human son-in-law who now stood dripping in sweat. He stammered, tripping over his words, inventing an elaborate excuse about cultural bonding rituals. He claimed these words were coded affirmations, meant to signify unity, devotion, and trust. It was either the best bluff of his life or the start of interstellar war. The diplomats muttered, some skeptical, others intrigued. She beamed at him, unaware of the chaos, gripping his hand like a triumphant partner. The Chancellor raised a brow, clearly unconvinced, but demanded further examples. He scrambled, trying to find a way out, but she took charge again, unleashing a string of slang she had practiced in the bedroom. Cock unity, pussy peace, moaning harmony, all delivered with grave sincerity. The chamber erupted in a mix of horror and suppressed laughter. His only defense was humor, twisting every obscene phrase into a metaphor. He explained cock as strength, pussy as creation, moan as spiritual release. Each explanation was thinner than paper, but desperation made his tongue sharper. To his surprise, some of the council actually nodded, fascinated by the strange poetry. He realized they might buy it if he could keep up the act. She added proudly that humans blessed each other by thrusting phrases into the air, to remind themselves that life is passion. He nearly collapsed, half in embarrassment, half in awe at her shameless conviction. The Chancellor's voice thundered through the hall, demanding to know if Earth truly valued such indecent language. He straightened, inhaled deeply, and declared that yes, Earth was a place where honesty and raw passion defined culture, and these words were the deepest form of love. It was reckless, a gamble without calculation, but he leaned on the truth of her enthusiasm. She looked at him with eyes blazing, convinced that he had just elevated her vocabulary to a universal truth. The chamber rippled with unease. Some diplomats whispered that such openness might be barbaric, others argued it was refreshing compared to stiff formality. He realized then that the tide could be turned. If he pushed harder, perhaps they would accept the nonsense as cultural richness. He cracked a crooked smile and announced that humans had survived countless wars because they spoke plainly, never hiding behind flowery metaphors, and the words she used were the bluntest declarations of love and loyalty. Her father studied him, silent for what felt like eternity. Then the Chancellor muttered that humans were either fearless or foolish, perhaps both, but that their boldness could not be ignored. Relief flooded him, though it was fragile, because he knew one wrong word could still topple the illusion. She squeezed his hand, whispering that she had done well, and for the first time he almost laughed, because somehow she had turned filthy slang into political theater. As the assembly concluded, whispers filled the hall. Some were scandalized, others amused, but all remembered the human who redefined diplomacy with phrases born in the sheet. He walked out with her at his side, shaking his head in disbelief. She leaned close, whispering that she still had more words to learn, and he groaned, realizing the show was far from over. The transition from private passion to public scandal had been completed, and though the storm seemed to settle, the aftershocks promised to echo across worlds. What began as a moan mistaken for an alarm had become a new language that might reshape diplomacy itself. Yet even as he dreaded what came next, a part of him laughed, because nothing in human history had ever prepared him for being Earth's ambassador of obscenity. The walk out of the council chamber should have been a relief, but instead it felt like stepping onto a cliff edge. The storm was not over, it was only shifting shape. She clung to his arm with triumphant satisfaction, whispering that she had made him proud, while he stared at the floor muttering that she had nearly killed him. The laughter of the human delegation followed them down the corridor, proof that Earth would never forget this moment. He kept his voice low, telling her that if she ever used those words again in front of her father, he would end up buried in some galactic prison. She only kissed his cheek, promising that she had more to share and that the next time would be even better. Back in the quarters, the tension returned to their bodies the way gravity pulls everything down. He tried to explain again, slower this time, that the words she had practiced were not sacred but scandalous. She listened politely, then straddled him with a smile, whispering that maybe the council needed scandal. His body betrayed his logic, giving in to her rhythm even as his mind screamed that she was going to get him executed. She pressed her lips to his ear, repeating the slang with pride, and he felt himself surrender again, powerless against her conviction. After the haze passed, silence fell heavy, broken only by the hum of the ship. He wondered aloud if perhaps honesty had been the right defense after all. She nodded, telling him that passion spoke clearer than politics. He almost believed her, but the memory of the Chancellor's face still haunted him. When the AI interrupted with a message from the Council requesting clarification of human phrases, he nearly fainted. She grinned, already preparing to answer, insisting that she was ready to teach them what she had learned. He grabbed her shoulders, swearing that only he should speak, but she shook her head and reminded him that she was the one carrying his words now. The next meeting was smaller, a gathering of key diplomats. He walked in already sweating, rehearsing another desperate explanation, but she spoke first. She delivered the slang like scripture, declaring that moaning was unity, cock was strength, pussy was creation. He tried to intervene, to soften her words with metaphors, but she was relentless. And strangely, the diplomats began nodding, scribbling notes, intrigued by the rawness. He realized they were buying it, not because it made sense, but because her sincerity was impossible to deny. When the Chancellor entered, the room tightened again. He listened silently as she described their union in words that would have made most humans blush. The father studied her, then turned his eyes to the human, asking if this was truly the heart of Earth's culture. The human breathed deep, knowing the only path forward was to double down. He said that Earth's strength came not from flowery deception but from direct expression, even if the words seemed indecent. He admitted that humans trusted passion over politics, and that was why his daughter's words carried truth. The Chancellor was quiet for a long moment, then finally declared that perhaps humans were not as barbaric as once believed. Perhaps their vulgarity was honesty in disguise. The chamber relaxed, laughter rippled, and for the first time he felt the tide shift in their favor. She squeezed his hand, glowing with pride, and he exhaled in disbelief, realizing she had turned filth into philosophy. Later, back in their quarters, the tension eased into intimacy once more. She whispered that she wanted to invent new words, to blend human slang with her own language. He begged her not to, saying the galaxy wasn't ready, but she ignored him, murmuring phrases that mixed alien consonants with English obscenities. The AI recorded everything, filing it under cultural linguistics. He buried his face in the sheets, knowing that somewhere out there, diplomats were already analyzing her moans for hidden meaning. The final wave of exhaustion hit him, but instead of fear he felt laughter bubbling in his chest. He laughed at the absurdity, at the insanity of being Earth's ambassador of obscenity, at the fact that love and lust had done what politics never could. She kissed him softly, whispering that tomorrow they would teach more, and he accepted it with a grin. The future was uncertain, but one truth was clear: the galaxy would never forget the language of their union.